So I have this giant island that needs filling. It's over 6 million blocks in size, and because I clearly hate myself, I'm going to do the most insane thing possible, transforming it into one of the biggest cities ever built in Minecraft. There's only one slight issue. I have an awful attention span, and so I'm going to try and build the entire thing in just 24 hours. By this time tomorrow, the island will be covered in giant skyscrapers, tons of traffic lanes filled with cars, interesting landmarks, and hundreds of houses. Oh, and like any good city, at least one giant Walmart, with a parking lot so big that it probably wiped out an entire forest. Alright, let's get straight into building, because if I don't start now, I might just stare at the island for an hour instead. I decided to begin by laying down the roads as a foundation, as roads are pretty crucial for a city. Since I'm surprisingly not a road expert, I decided to use Google Earth to find some bird's eye images of cities, so I could steal some of their layouts. Miami really ended up inspiring the layout a lot, as well as Los Santos from GTA, which isn't exactly on Google Earth, but it is permanently embedded into my brain. While Miami gives the beach vibe and modern feel, Los Santos will add a gritty industrial edge, perfect for mixing the best of both worlds. We can have giant modern skyscrapers right next to those classic, kind of boring brick office parks. On that note, now is probably a good time to tell you the locations that I plan to include. The suburbs will take up the north area of the map, and will be a huge area filled with dense streets and tons of smaller houses. I even left room to add a giant school here. Below you'll be able to find the Midtown area. This links up every district on the left island, and will have some really nice neighborhoods that will be very expensive to live in. This is also, most importantly, where the Walmart will be located, but for now I've just added in the car park. While I can use plugins like WorldEdit to make roads more quickly, car parks took ages to build as they needed to be done mostly by hand. And so I very desperately asked in my Discord if anybody would be free to help. And luckily for me, a couple of people agreed to come online. The Walmart car park alone took about 2 hours of painstaking work for my friend Jenna, just to add all of the markings. This was a really important moment for me as it made me realize that I couldn't do all of this alone, at least if I wanted to get an insane end result. And so while I was working on the rest of the layout, I was also contacting a huge army of builders to come online later, to help with all of the structures. I ended up planning to bring in over $4,000 worth of builders to help me out later on, but we'll get to that later. For now, let me dive into the industrial park. This area will be at the south of the map, covering the coast. It will be quite grotty and very grey, but also very important as it will house lots of brick offices. As well as this, it will be the main area where goods are created in the factories, and exported off the island using large cargo cranes. From the industrial park, you can also hop onto the highway, which leads you straight into the main city. This will be split into an east city and a west city, with the east city being the main entertainment spot. There will be huge skyscrapers that tower over the entire map, as well as some tourist spots and some parks. The west city will be similar, but a bit smaller in size and slightly less modern. It'll be more focused on having businesses be based there. It was at this point that my brain really decided to hurt, as building roads is a lot more boring than it looks. Actually, it looks pretty boring too. Luckily for me, my friend Victor was there to help, watching me closely the entire time while offering motivational messages to keep me going.
Dude, I would totally love to be in your shoes if I wasn't too suffering. No way this is actually possible.
The last main area is the downtown district. This is going to be a really dense city, with tons of very tightly packed buildings. It will mostly be an area to live, but with a couple of entertainment spots and some stores which are mostly for tourists. It's also worth mentioning that this remaining space in the corner of the island will be an airport. As it's an island, I felt it was very important to have an airport somewhere, to make it reachable, and as most big cities seem to have one. Luckily for me, my friend and fellow content creator Leonard has agreed to build this part for me, which is one less thing now for me to worry about. I really owe him big time, as I'm going to need all the time that I can get. There will also be a few other creators helping me to build other key areas around the world. I don't want to spoil everything now, but there will be a huge stadium, a camping area, and a bunch of other really interesting spots to hang out. Good news, we're basically done with the roads. To finish them up, I just had to add some supports to the highway so that it doesn't collapse, which is never ideal. We should probably also add a giant bridge across the river for pedestrians, but we can do that later on. But with that, the boring part is over. While it may not look huge, my render distance is currently set to 130. Let me lower that quickly. And now everything looks a lot bigger. It's going to be so cool to explore this once there are huge buildings lining all of the streets. Honestly, I'm a bit worried about finishing on time, but if we do, this will easily be one of the craziest Minecraft projects ever created. Can you imagine how cool it will be seeing the skyline of the city across the river, or just spending half an hour driving from one corner of the map to the other? We could even add a train track around the East City later on to help with transport, and come up with other ideas like that as we expand everything. I think that now would be a good time to bring online the army of builders. I feel a lot more confident about finishing this city now. We've got 15 hours left until the 24 hours is up, so let's get this project finished. The builders have dispersed around the city in groups, with each containing 3 to 4 builders. This way, each area will have a very unique look. It also means that we'll be seeing constant progress across the entire city. This area being worked on is the downtown district, and across the map, another group of builders are hard at work on the suburbs, creating smaller houses, each with a unique garden. The skyscrapers in the East City have also begun to go up. For now, there are only 2 builders working on these though, as they're both specialized in building skyscrapers. Another area with only 2 builders is the industrial park, as it's quite small. The factories and warehouses are already finished, and they have a nice unique look from the rest of the map. This is going to be an awesome area once it's finished, with a very urban look. Wait a second, I've wasted an hour watching other people build. I need to get back to building. Over here, I'm going to start building that train line that I mentioned earlier. We can begin by making a station. As you'll very quickly notice, the design was inspired by King's Cross Station in London, using lots of brick to blend it in nicely with the downtown area. I thought that this would be a good location as it's right near the airport and stadium, which a lot of people would be travelling both to and from. This took me about an hour to build, and unfortunately it was a complete waste of my time, as I've just realised that there's no room for any tracks to actually fit in this area. So I guess that this will probably just end up being another car park. There might not be trains, but one of my friends created a huge collection of vehicles for us to place around the map. These can be the last thing that we add, right when the city is finished. You might have noticed that there were some boats. These will mostly be parked at the docks, which we can build right now. Surprisingly, it didn't take too long to build this area, as most of the buildings here were just clones of each other. The cargo cranes, on the other hand, were not fun to build, and did take a while. The idea is that all of the produce that's made in the factories will be exported from the island here. The docks aren't perfect, but because we only have 12 hours left, they're gonna have to do. Meanwhile, as I worked on building the docks, my friend Rowann put together a really cozy looking beachside cafe, which you'll be able to find in a large field by the East City. This design is super detailed and it looks amazing. It's also one of the few locations on the map that actually has interior. Later on, we'll have to revisit this area to turn the surroundings into more of a park, so that the cafe looks less deserted and in the middle of nowhere. Doing a quick fly around though, everything is starting to come together really nicely. You can start to spot a couple of new areas popping up, but it's still hard to imagine what it will look like when it's all finished. I really love this expensive neighborhood that's being worked on in the Midtown area. The houses are so much more detailed than I ever expected. Work hasn't started yet though in the West City, which is really scary, but I'll try to get some extra builders online to really prioritize that. On the other hand, the suburbs are also starting to look really built up. I think that now would be a good time to get to work building the school in this giant plot of land here. I tried to model the school as best as I could after an American kind of high school. The design I kept very simplistic and very boring. At the end of the day, this is just a place to learn, so it doesn't need to look all that special. To keep it more realistic, I used a mixture of both bricks and white concrete, which give it a very modern look. I added this alley around the back, which leads to the main road. Later on, we can add a football pitch on the field across the road, which the school would have access to. In the 2 hours that the school took me to build, the suburbs were basically completed. I only asked the builders to work on making houses, as I can sort out all of the rest. But instead, the builders in this area went all out, and filled the zone with parks and plenty of trees. They saved me a lot of time. My favourite part of the suburbs though is the cul-de-sac, which features giant modern mansions which I would really love to live in. The gardens here especially look nice with giant pools in each one. As well as for suburbs, the West City was also completed, going from being empty to being packed with buildings in record time. Despite the builders finishing all of the skyscrapers, this is an area that we'll definitely need to revisit later on, to add some extra life on the streets, as right now it looks quite empty. It's not just these giant areas that have been worked on though. A couple of bonus locations have also been finished to make the world more fun to explore.
I'm Emchmu, and I built the camping area. I split my main ideas into 3 sections. First, the high ropes course. I made sure the course was usable, so you can actually try it out yourself. I built cabins, a dining hall, and reception, all with interiors to explore, and my favourite spot is the fire pit and burnt tree, which tells its own story through the build. I also made sure to spend some time terraforming with a hiking trail, adding rivers, bridges, and lookouts, just to keep the whole place a bit more immersive.
Right next to the camping area, another friend of mine named Feather worked on a large hospital. I'm very glad that he thought about building this, as I completely forgot that the city would need one. Now, if you're ill or injured, you can actually get help. Next to the hospital, Feather was also nice enough to work on a small fire station, as that's also pretty essential for a city. With the industrial area also being finished by the builders, they're pretty much done with the left side of the map. Now all that remains is the East City and the downtown area. In the main city, my friend Squeaky Juice has been working on a giant stadium. He's been building the entire time, spending about 10 hours on it. It's absolutely huge and fits perfectly next to the highway. It includes a large pitch for football games, but this could easily be switched out to a regular floor for concerts or other city events. He even built a large plaza out the front of the stadium, which adds some charm to the area, and it helps to make it more realistic, being a way to control the giant crowds that would form after a game. Following the roads, you'll easily be able to access the stadium from the airport. Leonard did an amazing job building this. It's easily one of my favourite spots on the map. One of the most genius block choices that I've ever seen is the glowing redstone dust on the runway. It's such a creative use of redstone. Please do make sure to subscribe to Leonard as well as all of the other creators involved. I'll be leaving a link to everyone's channels in the description. Now we have a slight problem. The huge army of builders have to go offline in an hour, as I could only afford 12 hours of their time. However, there's still loads of buildings to put together. I could help them out, but instead I'm going to build a giant Ferris wheel. Not like one that you'd see at a carnival, but instead something like the London Eye. These huge observation wheels are actually quite common in big cities, with some of the most iconic ones being the Singapore Flyer, the High Roller in Vegas, and the Orlando Eye. This will offer amazing views over everything that we've built so far, sitting nicely on the coast of the map. Inspired by the stadium, I also decided to build up a plaza around it, with a small gift store on the side that has some picnic benches outside of it. As well as this, I added in a very long queue for the wheel, and some units that would sell food. And of course, while I was building this, the army of builders finished up the rest of the city, with so many cool buildings. It's actually crazy how much 30 builders have been able to build in the past 12 hours. There must be hundreds of buildings now. Hold on, it's not time for cinematic shots just yet, as there's still 3 hours remaining on the clock. The majority of the map now looks pretty much done, with so many cool sections to explore and amazing sightlines. However, there are a few spots that have just been left and look pretty unfinished. There are grass patches that need to be covered in trees, empty plazas that need benches and extra details, and of course a giant car park that needs a Walmart. Let's begin by placing down all of the trees. These last few changes that I've got to do will completely transform the build, turning it from looking pretty unfinished to looking like a functional city. That is, if we manage to get this all done in time though. I'm using a mix of different trees to make it more realistic. Lots of the larger spaces I'm going to fill with oak trees, as well as a couple of birch trees and also some sycamores. I'm also adding in lots of palm trees along the coast of the city, and mixing up the sand a bit to blend it in better with the island. I've purposefully made some areas really dense with trees, while other spots are a bit more open, making them easier to navigate. I try to especially keep the park by the coast very open. I wanted it to be a very large open space for people to relax, and I didn't want to block the view of the ocean with too many trees. I can imagine this space just being filled with picnic blankets during the summer. It'd be so relaxing. By this beachside area, you might have noticed a really cool fountain in the background. That was actually made by Mogswamp. He was kind enough to come online and help out with this really neat build. While on paper it might just be a fountain, it looks so cool and well detailed that it would probably be a landmark of the city, that people would travel from around the world to visit, kind of like the Trevi Fountain in Rome. It was originally going to go in the middle of the Central Park, However, Mogswamp had the genius idea of putting it in the middle of this roundabout, where it fits in perfectly. Talking about the central park though, my friend Sluda Builds worked on creating a really immersive area, which would be the perfect place to walk your dog or just people watch on one of the benches. It's such a cool area to explore, completely surrounded by giant skyscrapers just like Central Park in New York. There are even a couple of little statues scattered around the park, so that you can easily navigate where you are, making it a great place to meet up with your friends. The last kind of park area that we've got to work on is the field across the school. I'm really low on time right now, and so instead of building a football pitch, I'm going to do the smart thing and just steal the one from the stadium, making a few small adjustments to just make it fit in better. And let's also add in some bleachers so that people can sit and watch the game. I might be going insane, but I'm pretty sure that one of the builders must have deleted the road that leads up to the park, and so I quickly just added in a new one. With trees off our checklist, we can move on to building a bridge, which can connect each side of the city. This is going to be really challenging, as I've only got about an hour and a half left and still quite a lot to do, so I need to build this in about 30 minutes at most. It's really essential that we add this bridge, as currently there's no way for pedestrians to get from one island to the other, as the highway is just for cars. The design is very inspired by the Brooklyn Bridge, which I was lucky enough to visit on a trip a few months ago. I did switch up the design a bit though, having cars run down the middle of the bridge, giving it a really unique shape. I think I managed to get quite a nice balance between it looking a bit industrial, but also very polished with the giant sandstone arches that hold it up. With it finished, I just blended it in quickly with the sides of the pathways. We still have the Walmart left to build, but first I want to just quickly go around and add some vehicles to the roads. I don't have much time left, so I can't add as many as I would like to, as they take quite a while to pace down. That being said, I've added a decent amount, even forming a few small traffic jams in more busy areas. I've just realised that I've placed all the cars on the wrong side of the road. I don't have time to fix it, so we're just gonna have to roll with it. Let's also add in a couple of boats by the docks, and we can add a few planes in the sky just to give the city a bit more life. The final thing that we have left to build is the Walmart, and then this entire city will be finished. There's barely any time left, and so I've asked Squeaky Juice to help me out. He's already quickly built the attached gas station while I was placing all the cars, and he's currently working on building some restaurants on the side of the car park, including a Nando's, which makes me very happy to see. I have about 25 minutes left to build an entire Walmart now. Luckily, it's surprisingly easy to build one, as the shape is very flat and rectangular. I of course added the iconic Walmart sign on the front of the building, with the signature blue colour, and then just expanded the details a bit on the front to add some small parts that stick out. And now I'm spending every last second to add small final details on the roof. 3, 2, 1. This time yesterday, the city was just an idea, and now it's a reality, at least virtually. But I want to use it to do something good in the real world. Until the end of April, I'm selling the World Download with 100% of proceeds going to Shelter, a non-profit charity helping those struggling with housing and homelessness. If you can afford to buy a copy, I'd really appreciate it. There will be a link to the store page with more information in a pinned comment. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and of course leave a comment. I genuinely love reading every single one. Have a great day. Goodbye.